Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
Good afternoon. It's 12:06 here on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn, and this is Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership one week at a time. In studio, as always, I am joined by LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. How's it going, LJ?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Fred. He's back. We've got Fred. Woo! Back in the house. Fred Pichette of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Fred, welcome back.
Thank you, Robin. Good to see you.
Happy to have you here. Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad he's back.
I am very glad to have the whole gang. The gang's all back, which is nice to see.
We're super busy these days.
That's a good thing, guys.
Yeah, it's a very good thing.
That's what I like to hear.
But we need Fred's horsepower in the office there.
Thank you for your warm welcome, guys.
Let's start with our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. We didn't have a winner last week. Our question was too hard, so we decided to go double or nothing. So
Are we doubling down or two winners?
Doubling down.
All right.
Double down. Give double the cookies.
That's a lot of cookies.
That's a lot of cookies from Felix and Norton. You can visit their store, by the way, at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-790-0800 gets cookies delivered straight to their door. Our question this week: what document must a borrower in Quebec provide to a lender to verify that they have title and legal rights to the property they are buying? If you think you know it, 514-790-0800. Make sure you include your name. Don't just send in the answer. We like to know who you are. It's a lot of fun.
There's a surge on Google right now.
Yeah, don't Google it, guys. That's cheating.
Martin, why are you encouraging that?
I do.
There's a lot of stuff in the news this week. It's been kind of a busy week. I saw someone post online, why did we have to have Halloween, daylight savings, and the U.S. election all within like a week of one another? It's been wild. I'm tired. I'm feeling tired, guys. It's a lot. So how does the outcome of the U.S. presidential election impact the Canadian economy, our interest rates, if at all? I know that's something that's on a lot of people's minds. Some people looked south of the border when making their decisions.
Who wants to start?
I think you do.
I think you're chomping at the bit, Martin.
No, I'm not chomping at the bit. Actually, you know what? Can I actually? So John Mulaney in 2018, comedian, did a bit on Trump, and he compared Trump to a horse in a hospital. So, they're bringing it back. So what he says is he compares Trump to a horse in a hospital. No one knows what's going to happen next. The horse doesn't know either. He's never been in a hospital before. He's as confused as you are. It's a very funny bit, and it's worth going to watch.
I will look it up.
Okay.
Except this time the horse has been in the hospital before.
I know, and he's been planning for 4 years, and we were just talking about it off air. I think the first 100 days, we're all going to get a whiplash. I think the team's going to come in, and they're going to put everything in place as quickly as they can. So, since the election, what have we seen? We've seen a surge in equities, crypto markets, and bond yields.
Yep.
Bond yields increases. So when bond yields increase, as we know, we've talked about it a lot. So when the Bank of Canada rate goes down, it directly affects variable rates.
Yes.
But when bond yields increase, what happens to fixed rates? They go up.
Yeah.
And so immediately after the election, we actually saw a lot of lenders go up by 5 to 10 basis points.
Wow.
So, and we're starting to see that now fixed rates, the gap between variable rates and fixed rates is about 70 basis points. So if you believe what the specialists are saying, or the experts are saying.
Economists?
The economists? Yeah, well, that's a good way. Yeah, the economists are saying we're going to continue seeing the Bank of Canada lower the interest rates. So what we have seen is a huge increase in demand for variable rates compared to fixed.
Interesting.
And we actually converted two people that they're about to close on their mortgages this week that called us up and said, listen, I know I've got a great fixed rate, but I believe interest rates are going to continue going down. Can we convert my rate before I go to notary to a variable rate? And as much as I've always been the fixed rate guy and Fred's always been the variable rate guy, I'm starting to have a conversion.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid. You know, he's been gone, but I've been drinking the Kool-Aid while he's been gone. And now I'm becoming a believer that the right approach right now, and no one's got
A crystal ball.
a crystal ball, because I always say mirror ball. So thank you,
I got your
LJ.
back.
But everyone's got I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe if you listen to what the pundits are saying, that we could see another 100 basis points, and the big banks are actually saying 175 basis points by mid to end 2025. So if there's a 70 basis points gap right now, if you're willing to play the odds and listen to what the economists are saying, then the right choice now is variable.
And to add on that, I really think that it's really a timing thing. Like in most things in life, timing plays a huge role in it. And specifically right now, the fact that we are about 70 basis points away, the fact that there's talks that already a 50 basis point drop in December has been priced into a lot of things that we're seeing, which would then only put us 20 basis points away. And the fact that if you are on variable, you can then convert it to a fixed rate if you want in possibly a year or two, if maybe we get to that 3.5, 3.2% fixed rate threshold, makes it pretty interesting because you can kind of ride that wave. You're in a protected position. You obviously have the flexibility with the variable because you have the lower prepayment penalty of only 3 months of interest. Given the spread right now, I think that it definitely makes a lot of sense to ride that variable wave, so long as you're open to a little bit of risk, like anything, buyer beware. Nevertheless, the writing on the wall right now is that it will continue to drop. We're going to continue to see that prime rate and variable rate continue to drop in that direction.
And what does Fred always say?
Well,
Make sure
I
you read
say
the
a lot of
conditions.
things, but
No, but you still have to qualify.
of
And
course.
so the people that actually called us had rates in the 424, 434s fixed, but now we need to qualify them at around 5.1, plus the stress test puts them at 7.1.
Wow.
So it's actually more challenging to qualify with a variable rate, but long term, I think you're going to be beneficial. Sorry,
Well, I was about to say the variable rate has always been a very good option for me, a very valuable option because it's very flexible. And that's one thing, you don't want to be locked in for 5 years, especially when you don't know where the interest rate are going to, what direction. Right now, okay, everybody says it's going to go down, but I think if you go variable, you have a chance to lock up a better rate in a year or 6 months to 2 years from now, which is going variable. It's probably the best thing to do right now. But again, it depends on your risk tolerance.
Before we go to traffic, guys, something interesting this week. American searches for Canadian homes were up this week. Of course, no matter the outcome of the election, people always threaten to move to Canada.
Exactly.
Right? That's like the go-to. But do people actually follow through? The last time
actually
Trump
paying.
was elected, I heard on the radio this week, actually, Justine McIntyre was in for Elias Makos this week on CJD, and she was speaking about how there was actually refugee claimant attempts when Trump was last elected. People in the U.S. literally saying they had to flee because of their political convictions and that they were in danger. They were denied. Not a single one was granted. But could we see something similar, or just in general, people just being fed up with things in the U.S. and saying, you know what, I'm going to go to Canada. Medicare, woohoo.
Well, because the other thing that he has promised to do is to deport all the illegal immigrants. And so, again, we were talking about this off air. Roxton Road. We heard Legault putting the ball into Trudeau's court this week, saying, okay, what's the plan to beef up our borders with the United States? Because just the threat of deporting all these people may go, should I go south or should I go north?
Yeah.
And, you know, time and time again, Canada is rated as one of the nicest places to live. It's got stability, quality of life, universal health care, quality education. So it makes it very attractive to Americans and to immigrants.
And the highest taxpayer in the world, probably, too. You forget to mention.
Yeah,
We pay for all of those wonderful services, right?
But you
well,
gotta
I'm a
figure
proud Canadian, so.
if we're talking about illegal immigrants, I don't think taxes are the consideration.
No, for sure.
No. Why, you don't think they're paying taxes?
A lot of illegal immigrants are paying taxes, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They're working, contributing to the economy, what have you.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
Welcome back to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin. That's LJ. That's Fred. That's Martin. The gang's all back. We're all together. And it's time now for our Mortgage Minute. We've got Cameron. He's new. He's behind the board. He's smiling.
Attaboy, Cameron.
And he's ready to hit play on the beautiful Mortgage Minute that we've prepared for you. You got it ready to go, Cameron? All right, here it is.
What are considered alternative lenders? What do they do? And why would borrowers go to them? This is your Mortgage Minute. Alternative lenders, such as B lenders and private lenders, offer mortgage solutions for borrowers who may not meet traditional bank criteria due to factors like credit issues or self-employment. B lenders are regulated institutions that provide more flexible terms, but often at higher interest rates. Private lenders, which can be individuals or companies, offer short-term loans, but with even higher interest rates and fees. Borrowers turn to these types of lenders for quicker access to financing and more lenient qualification requirements when traditional banks cannot accommodate their needs.
Alternative lenders are a very interesting concept indeed, especially as mortgage delinquency rates are on the rise in Canada. We've had folks from Equifax on the show a few times now, and it feels like every single time they come on Under One Roof, they're telling us that delinquencies are up. Whether it's credit cards, mortgages, people are defaulting on their debts. Cars especially.
Because cars and credit cards are usually the precursor to mortgages because people want to protect where they live. And so they'll start defaulting on auto and credit card before they start defaulting on their mortgages, but everything's catching up to people now.
Exactly. So is this a situation where someone could turn to an alternative lender, or if you're already in this position, is it too late at that point?
No, I think the alternative lenders are there for one reason. Like, it's really to help people, as Martin says in his Mortgage Minute, that do not qualify with a regular bank.
Okay.
In Quebec, we're luckily enough, we have access to three major banks that really help self-employed and people with credit issue. Name of the bank, probably people knows, Equitable Bank, EQ Bank, Home Trust, and Aventry Banks. These three are excellent alternative lenders. Why they there for? First, to help self-employed people. Let's say most of self-employed, they have a great income of, I don't know, 150, 200,000, but at the end, after the accountant, write off the expense, exactly, they get off with a $40,000, $50,000 income. Sadly, nowadays, with the mortgage rule, they do not qualify for a mortgage. This is why the alternative lenders are there. And I like to specify that an alternative lender is not a private lender. What's the interest rate with the pro and cons with an alternative lenders? First of all, they're more flexible, easier to qualify. And the interest rate is not that bad. Like, people think like, oh, it's a lot. No, it's not a lot. Let's say it's 1 to 2% more than any regular bank. Like, if you're self-employed, obviously you cannot say to, oh, my business works very, very well. I'm very wealthy. Everything's fine. And at the end of the day, you're declaring $40,000 as your income. That's why probably for you, an alternative lender, it's a good choice.
I have two questions now. So when I first bought my house, we went with an alternative lender. We didn't have great credit, but we had a huge chunk of money for a down payment. So that was the option that we chose at the time. And I agree that it was a great option. It worked really well for us. And after a couple of years, we switched to a traditional lender and everything was great.
That's the strategy. So you have to have an exit plan.
Now,
because you don't want to stay with a B too long.
Exactly.
Because you're going to pay more interest than necessary.
Yep.
So what you do is, as Fred says, you don't qualify because of different reasons. Well, you take that year or those 24 months to rebuild whatever you need to do so that at the end of those 12 or 24 months, we can switch you to a conventional lender.
Now, my question here is, if you were not self-employed, you had a regular job, you qualify for a regular mortgage, everything is great, but in the 5-year term, you become self-employed. Your situation changes. Does that affect your renewal for your mortgage?
No, for the renewal, if you had paid your mortgage on time, any banks or lender have the obligation to renew you.
Okay.
You didn't default on your loan, which is fine. But again, if you're asking for more money or you want to switch lender, you still have to go through the process of qualification, which is for self-employed, we usually need 2 years average of income, which is sometimes I would say to a client like that, I would say, take your renewal for 1 or 2 years. And after 2 years, let's see what we could do. But again, it's very important sadly, but you need to declare something if you're self-employed,
Yeah, a lot of people write everything off as an expense, right?
The write-off people, as per Schitt's Creek.
Yeah. Alternative lenders, are there any other scenarios where you would recommend an alternative lender?
Yeah, if you owe back taxes to the government.
Okay.
You can go see your bank and say, hey, listen, I owe $40,000, $50,000 to the government. Could you refine my property? Most of the time, they will ask you the notice of assessment showing that you don't own any back taxes. Like, this is a good strategy to go with an alternative lender for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
You pay off your back taxes. Actually, it's a good thing. The interest is very high at the government, if you own them back taxes. And then the following year, we could, send you back to a regular bank.
Because often a lot of people talk about the three categories of lenders, right? There are conventional, which are the big banks.
Yep.
There are B lenders or alternative lenders, which are financial institutions. Then there are private lenders. And I'd add a fourth, and for people who are 55 and above, are reverse mortgages.
Right.
And those can also be a good strategy to get yourself out of a jam if you've got a lot of equity in your house, because they don't qualify you on income, they qualify you on equity in the home. So a lot of people who get to a certain age, their revenues start to slow down, and they never have the reflex, especially in Quebec, to consider a reverse mortgage. It's a viable solution.
Also, Martin, if they want to help their kids with the down payment for the
absolutely.
purchase
Pull
of a
some
property.
equity out, and boom, there you go.
And you're creating wealth for your family, which is
It's so funny because there was an article
important.
this week,
Yep.
and we have a client right now that is struggling with their down payment, and I said, "Have you turned to mom and dad because they're sitting on a lot of wealth right now?" And I sent them the article to help her with her arguments with mom and dad, and she wrote back. She goes, "Oh, thank you so much. I love this stuff." And I said, "Remember to tell your parents they're investing in you." In your future prosperity, in your future wealth. And it can become generational wealth, because if you buy a house early enough and you pay it off, then you're sitting on an asset that can actually be used generation after generation after generation.
That's often an uphill battle, right? Depending on your relationship with your parents. There's a lot of folks who are of the Gen X baby boomer generation who said, I didn't get help from my parents, so why should I have to help my kids? But things are very, very different in today's world, right? The CMHC released its fall report this week. We were talking about mortgage delinquencies. There are more than 1 million mortgages up for renewal next year. Could we be in for some trouble?
Well, so the stat I got is 1.2 million.
Wow.
And 85% of those were signed during COVID. Were signed
Rock
where,
bottom.
people were signing for at 1.75, at 1.85, 1.95. And when they're going to come back for renewal, at least things are getting better at renewal. But a lot of people can expect about a bump, about 30% on their mortgage payments. And hence, you combine that with a certain amount of debt, the cost of living, buying a quart of milk right now, we could see delinquency on the rise.
I want to dive into this a little bit because I'm hearing a lot of different opinions. I have my own opinions on the fact, and the reality is everybody who qualified for these mortgages, even at 1.5 to 2.5%, they all qualified at 5.25 at the time.
Absolutely.
They all had to go through the stress test at 5.25.
I think the argument is the cost of living has risen substantially, and also people during COVID, during those 2 years, weren't spending any money.
100%.
So they were sitting on a lot of money, and there was a lot of free money coming their way as well.
So all of this is true. Now, the question becomes, what are people going to give up? Are they going to give up their shelter, their housing, effectively? Are they going to give up possibly vacations that they're taking? Are they going to give up extracurriculars for their kids? Are they going to give up the weekly restaurants?
Or the fourth car.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple of people that come to us and go, we're having trouble. And I go, because you got 4 cars.
What are people going to give up is going to become the question, because I always find it hard to believe that people are truly going to say, you know what, I'm going to give up this mortgage and not tighten their belt in other locations, given the cost of rent. Because although their mortgage might be high, at least they're sitting on this asset, they can manage that. Whereas the cost of rent, let's say you own a single family home in the West Island right now, the renting that property is going to be at least $3,500 to $4,000 a month.
It's a losing proposition.
To find out more about your lending options, you can get in touch with Fred and Martin at fredandmartin.com. Still to come, what's the net worth difference between a homeowner and someone who doesn't own their own home? The answer will shock you. That's coming up after the news.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn. That's Fred Pichette. That's Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. That's LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. Guys, let's keep talking about what we were talking about before the news. Delinquencies on the rise. People may be in a situation where they have to decide, do I give up my house? Do I give up Netflix and all of those other things, vacations, what have you. It's a difficult decision to make.
I'd like you guys to text in and let us know what decision are you planning on making, because most of you probably have mortgages that are renewing in the next year or so. What approach are you going to take? I think we all understand that the cost of borrowing has gone up, obviously. There's going to have to be some difficult decisions being made. Where do you plan on taking this? And we're going to continue to develop this thought, because I still don't think that many people are going to make that decision of selling their primary residence that is going to be tax-free, that's going to continue to grow, that we've kind of gone time and time again as it's the main nest egg of Canadians. Or are we going to see people decide that going out for dinners and vacations is more important for their mental health and for quality of life, etc., and that's the road that we're going to take?
Because my biggest concern would be if you sell your house, you'll probably never be able to get back into the real estate market.
My solution will be, first of all, do your budget. Most of people, they don't do, they just spend. And they don't really know what they spend each month. I think this is the step number one.
It will shock you. I have a spreadsheet that I keep track every single month, and my husband is always blown away by what we spend on what he calls little things like milk and bread and like those kinds of things. They just add up so quickly. It's so important to keep track.
And obviously, if your mortgage comes to renewal and you're struggling, you cannot just take your renewal as is, because you're going to struggle for another 5 years. You need to address the problem, which is, first, do your budget. Second, maybe stop spending on your credit cards a little bit, because you're not going to increase your debt. And third of all, I know people, they love cars, but sometimes, if your car payment is $700-800, maybe you could change cars for a payment of $300 a month.
You know what's scary is how it used to be so much cheaper to buy a used car. And as I've spoken about on the show, I'm in the market to buy a car right now. So I am like deep into Auto Trader and stuff like that. And the difference in price for a used car versus a new car is not that big anymore. Used cars are really there are still deals, of course.
Yeah, there's still some deals, and you don't pay
the benefits you get with a new car, like the warranties and all of those kinds of things.
There are extended warranties out there, so and if you really because as soon as you drive a car off the lot, it depreciates by 30%.
Yes,
Boom.
Absolutely.
So I know everybody loves the new car feel, the new car smell, and with problem-free for 3 to 5 years. But cars are made a little bit, if you guys have ever been to Cuba, there are some cars on the road that have been on the road for 75 years down there.
Yeah.
So I think it's just more of a North American thing that after 3 years, I want to flip my car. And there are a lot of people.
My car is 10 years old, by the way.
Exactly. So, 10-year-old car. My brother wants to get his car up to 500,000. We were making fun of him now. He can afford to buy a new car. But he's driving a Mazda 3. It's 16 years old. And he wants to get it to 500,000 kilometers.
You can give me a lift to Toronto next week. I'll help him throw another 500 on there.
But he's best friends with his mechanic, because his mechanic sees him every 2 weeks. But that's the other extreme, right?
Yep. Most people are not like that. Most people also don't know how to take care of a car properly.
But I think the dealerships actually play a role in this as well. I got a call last week from our dealership saying hey, Mr. Aguinaga, you're about 2.5 years into your lease. We have this special event next week. Would you like to come by? Maybe we can encourage you to take on a new car. And I was like, it's okay. I'm very happy with my car. I actually want to buy it back at the end of this lease. But nevertheless, they're playing that up as well.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. But that's what their job is, to sell cars, right?
Upsell.
They want you to constantly be coming back, and the best client is somebody who's already a client, right? It's easy to convert them into a customer again. Guys, let's get to the net worth differences between a homeowner and a non-homeowner. There was a report out this week, and it was kind of staggering. I think it's pretty self-evident that someone who owns their own home is going to have a higher net worth than somebody who rents, for example. But I didn't expect the difference to be so drastic between the two. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, LJ?
Almost millions of dollars, no?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it was like $900,000, I think.
Compared to $11,000?
So buying a home could cost you substantially in your life, not just in the short term, right?
So Fred does an exercise when he meets with our clients, especially first-time home buyers, and he explains if you continue renting, you're always going to stay at the exact same place. If you buy, your equity is going to increase and your mortgage is going to decrease. And what's found between the mortgage and the equity, the mortgage, what am I trying to say?
And the loan?
And the loan, thank you. No, the mortgage and the loan.
And the value of the property.
And the value of the property is equity. And if you're a renter, you never create equity for yourself. As a homeowner, you create equity.
Actually, you're creating equity as a renter. You're creating it for somebody else.
Exactly. That's the point I was trying to make.
Ugh, that's frustrating. October home sales report, huge difference, up 44% compared to last year. Is that a typo? That can't be true.
That is not a typo. Sales were up across the board in huge numbers. I didn't bring the other ones for categories, but homes, single-family homes was 44, I believe. Condos was something like 43, and then plexes was like 34%. So across the board, sales are up significantly. In terms of the pricing, though, let's look at average price of a single-family home, which rose to $589,000. That's up 8% year over year. If we dive into condominiums, we've reached an average price of $414,000, and this is again for the census metropolitan area of Montreal. That is up 6%, and if we go into plexes, they saw a rise of 7% with an average price of $789,500. So across the board, prices are up significantly, sales are up significantly, listings are up as well, obviously. So we're seeing a lot of transactions, a lot of volume. People are excited about real estate again. Everywhere I go, everyone always says, LJ, what's going on with the market, right? Doesn't matter. Last night we were at poker with some friends. It's like, what's happening with the market? And it's interest rates are down. People are excited about real estate. People are calling us. I had a meeting with a new client before coming on the air today. This is what we're doing. We're meeting with tons of clients and even sellers as well because they're finally putting their chips into play effectively. They are staying off. They're getting off of the sidelines and saying, hey, you know what? Like, rates are back down. People are excited about real estate. Prices are now higher than they were back in 2022 during the peak, right? We've already kind of this correction that everyone was super afraid of and this crash that everyone was hoping for and expecting that never happened. Mm-hmm. It was so short-lived, and that's what we told everybody was going to happen. People weren't buying. Everyone got nervous about these 6% mortgages that we had. And now people are calling and they're like, you know what? Now I see it. In the next 3 to 6 months, prices are going up. I have to get in now. Rent's gone up significantly. The cost of continuing rent is going to continue to eat up at your nest egg and your net worth effectively. So, yeah.
Have you seen an uptick on people wanting to buy revenue properties? Because I was reading the same stats that you were reading. They say that a lot of people who are applying for mortgages are not necessarily shopping for single-family dwellings. They're actually looking for, and there's a huge uptick on revenue properties right now.
But it makes so much sense. It's the best way to house hack because you actually get the separation. You know, house hacking is the concept where you would buy a single family home, let's say 3 or 4 bedroom, you'd live in one bedroom, you'd find roommates for the other bedrooms, and they would effectively pay your mortgage and taxes, hopefully, and you would leave scot-free, and you get to benefit from the appreciation of the property. Now, that's great if you're willing to live with other people, but if we go down the multiplex road, you can buy a duplex or a triplex, and you have your own unit, so you have your privacy, your intimacy, and you still have the other people paying in their rent, which is going to contribute to offset the mortgage costs, taxes, insurance, etc. Yes, you're going to have capital expenditures because everybody who rents, who says real estate is the devil, says, oh, but if you consider taxes and insurance and capital expenditures and maintenance, you come up upside down. And while I'm happy to look at the math and say that there's definitely cost to owning property, I don't know almost a single person who is financially constrained enough and diligent enough to make the investments in their portfolio instead of making that mortgage payment, taking that money and putting it into an investment portfolio every single month without dipping into it, without doing anything else to actually see any of that growth happen. So when you run the numbers, there's an argument to be made. I'm happy to look at it, but I don't know anybody who's willing to actually stick to it.
Question for you, LJ. More often I saw plexes going out for too much. What are your thought about it? Because the asking price sometimes when you compare to the revenue of the property, it seems to be too much. But I guess people they love those kind of property. But how do you see it?
So, okay, you're looking at the multiples effectively, and when we're looking at multiples, it's how much is the revenue of the property, what multiple do we have to apply to get to the sale price, and you should be looking at, let's say, somewhere between 16 to 20% on gross rents, depending on the neighborhood, depending on what you have. Now, the reality is in Montreal, we have a lot of properties that have a much lower rental income than what it should be. You still have properties that are receiving $700 a month in rental revenue for a unit that is currently renting on average around for $1,500 to $2,000. So people are pricing in a portion of the optimization potential into this because as an owner occupant, if you buy a property, you can repossess it for you to live in, obviously. You might live in it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then after that, you might turn it back into a rental and continue about your business. What they're looking at is what are sales comparables. So what are triplexes in St. Henry, for example, selling for on average? They might not be able to get the full amount because the rental revenue isn't quite there, but they also don't want to give up $200,000 because they just wanted to apply the multiple. So we're looking at how much of that money can we actually capitalize on even though we're not collecting the rent.
Now, as much as buying a Plex is a good idea, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be a landlord? And
Yes.
you are a landlord, LJ. So
There's a lot that comes with that, right? It's not just collecting the rent check every month.
So there's two things I'll say to that before we wrap up quickly and dive into after. It's, do you want to be a landlord? Yes, but it's, do you want to be a landlord who lives with your tenants is a very different conversation than do you just want to be a landlord? Because when you are in a duplex or a triplex, your tenants have direct access to you. So that relationship is a little bit different when somebody can literally come knocking on your door at any point in time when something's happening. It could be good. It could be less good. There might be a bit more friction.
the toilet is overflowing. Come and fix it.
You probably see it happening in your apartment when you look up, right?
When it's leaking into yours.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We're with you until 1 p.m. We cram so much into this show. Sometimes I'm blown away at the amount of information that we provide in an hour. It's crazy. I love this segment, and I'm super excited to find out what our property of the week is, LJ.
So this week, live the plateau lifestyle at 3649 Rue Clark. This charming 893 square foot, one-bedroom condo boasts exposed brick, wooden beams, and floods of natural light. Priced at $559,000, it includes a washer, dryer, range, and more. Enjoy private balconies in the front and back, large storage space in the basement, and the proximity to shops, parks, and metro stations. Don't miss out on this rare gem. Call today to book your visit. Now, my go-to spot for Tex-Mex in the area would have to be Ice House. I love their laid-back atmosphere and ambiance. Don't leave without trying their ribs or bourbon lemonade.
I've never been to Ice House.
I've never been either, and I do love
Ah,
Tex-Mex.
there you go.
And I
Put it on the
love
list.
exposed brick with the big wood beams. That is such a gorgeous
And
style.
the price is right.
It is.
And it's a huge one-bedroom, right? It has space for a little office at the front. The light that comes in is truly spectacular. It's got all the charm and natural history of the plateau in this one perfect unit.
Yeah, you said 893 square feet. My first condo was a 2-bedroom, and it was like 550 square feet. It was tiny.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, guys, we got to get to our answer to the trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Double or nothing this week, because we didn't get a winner last week. The question was, what document must a borrower in Quebec provide to a lender to verify that they have title and legal rights to the property that they are buying? The answer is deed of sale. Anna in Côte Saint Luc was the first person to text in the correct response, so you can look forward to some delicious cookies from Felix and Norton in the next few weeks delivered to your door.
A mountain of cookies.
A mountain of cookies, if you will. My mom was in town this week, and she is obsessed with Felix and Norton cookies. So that was like on her list when she comes to Montreal. She needs to have a poutine, she needs to get some bagels, and she's got to have her Felix and Norton cookies. That's
But
like the
can you-
checklist.
But can you eat only one cookie?
No, she packs them to bring back home. She puts them in the suitcase because they're so good. Guys, we learned a lot this week. At least I did. I always learn a lot hanging out with you. First of all, pay close attention to what's going on in the rest of the world. I think too often people just ignore what's going on in other countries, or they say, oh, I'm so grateful I live in Canada. But things that happen in other countries, especially foreign elections, especially south of the border, do have an impact on our economy.
Tariffs, immigration, actually our free trade agreement with Mexico, Canada, and the United States is up for review in 2026. I think it'll be up for renewal in 2026.
And you've got Melanie Joly as Canada's foreign affairs minister right now. Last time was Chrystia Freeland when they were
And
negotiating
remember,
it.
there's an election between now and then, too.
There is. Ooh, things could get very, very interesting. Before you default on your mortgage, if you're coming up for renewal in the next year, like 1.2 million Canadians are, get in touch with a mortgage broker. Find out what your options are. An alternative lender could be an option for you, a private lender. Maybe you're going to refinance. Maybe you're going to change lenders altogether. Fred and Martin can figure it out for you.
And
so
don't
just
get to
give
the
them a
point
call.
where you're going to be defaulting.
No, you don't want to
worst
wait
comes to
till
worst.
it's
If there's no way out, then sell the property. Most likely the property has increased in value enough to cover off the mortgage and leave you with a little bit of pocket change. It's not the inverse where the property has gone down in value and it's worth less than your mortgage. So, get in touch with us because we can run the numbers for you. And if the worst thing that you have to do is to sell your place, at least you won't go into default.
which is super important. And also, if you're thinking about whether or not to purchase a home, just do it. Just do it. Your future net worth will thank you for
Stop
it.
waiting now.
Yeah.
We've been telling you this for the last 3 or 6 months. Stop waiting, get into the market because there's limited inventory and prices more than likely are going to be driven up. So the offset of a lower mortgage rate is going to be chewed up by the price that you're going to pay for the home.
And buy a house before an American Democrat voter moves to Canada because he
From
wants
a Democrat
to
state.
flee.
What happened to the blue wall?
Yeah, exactly. So much for
They
that.
all moved to Canada.
That's pretty much it for us this week. A reminder that Under One Roof MTL can be heard live every Sunday at noon right here on CJD 800. If you want to learn more about us, the show, you can visit our website at underoneroofmtl.com. In the meantime, you can get in touch with LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where can people reach you?
Check out our website, ljrealties.com, or on all socials with the handle LJ Aguinaga. That's LJAGUINAGA, or LJ Realties. You can also call or text me at 514-500-4040.
Fred, Martin, where can people get in touch with you guys?
Fred?
Well, pretty easy. FredandMartin.com.
FredMartin.com?
well-
3 times. FredMartin.com.
Easy to remember. I encourage people, if they have a mortgage renewal, to get in touch with us.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
could really help them.
There are options out there.
One thing I haven't spoken about in a little while is our property management services.
Oh,
so
yes.
if you are looking for property management services, feel free to drop by our website, Plex Doctor. That's plexdr.com. I'm happy to help you with any multiplex or condo that you need help managing. Yes,
Because if
Martin?
you don't want to be a landlord, you can have LJ manage your property.
That's it.
That feels like a win-win. You
Isn't
get to
it?
buy and have all of that revenue coming in and have
the
someone
costs-
else.
And the costs aren't that high to have your property managed.
No, and then somebody else deals with the overflowing toilet.
Exactly.
That's not your problem.
Our maintenance
Come and
manager.
fix the toilet at 3 in the morning.
Yeah. If you missed anything, you can listen to this show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. This has been Under One Roof MTL.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.